I believe that education, like you mentioned, is pivotal. I mean, with the US is $35 trillion in debt, that debt increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. So we all know that money's broken, and we all know that we need to transfer to Bitcoin, and we need mass adoption. The problem that I discovered when looking at this space is that education in Bitcoin is actually broken. One of the most universally appreciated games of all time is Pokémon Go. And so we were trying to think about ways to make education more friendly and engaging. So what if we could apply some of those things to the Bitcoin space? Let's say there's this app, it's called JIPPY, and we're building this thing called Tribe Clash. And the goal of this application is to make learning about Bitcoin engaging. Join JIPPY and you start a game with Tribe Clash, and you join a tribe of friends. And a tribe is a collection of friends that you are inviting to play with. And each week, JIPPY will release a territory in your city for your tribe to claim. And there are 21 territories in total. So the objective is when you go to that territory that week with either one tribe member, it could be you, or it could be a whole group, we will send you a quiz question about Bitcoin to answer. And you've got to answer that question, or questions, plural, the fastest correctly, and you're battling with other tribe members.
Welcome back to What is Your Bitcoin Story podcast, where we dive into the fascinating journey of individuals who have embraced the world of Bitcoin. I'm your host, Gigi, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Oliver Porter is a software engineer with a total of 9 years of startup experience, boasting a diverse background in various roles and industries. As a self-proclaimed libertarian and Bitcoiner, Oliver is passionate about great design and creating magical user experiences. As the founder and CEO of JIPPY, his mission is to bring fun and friendly Bitcoin education to the masses through gamification. Get ready to be inspired as we explore Oliver's unique Bitcoin story and learn about his exciting journey into the world of Bitcoin. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gigi. So great to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for taking the time. As I told you off the record, Carr had a lot of great things to say about you, Oliver, and your project JIPPY, so it was only right to have you on and hear it firsthand from yourself.
Too kind. Yeah, we love Carr, we love Pleb Lab, everything that's going on in Austin. We have a strong Bitcoin community here.
That's what I hear. Yeah, Carr went deep dive. If some of you listeners are thinking, who's Gigi talking about? Go a few episodes back and definitely check out the Pleb Lab episode with Carr. He does a full breakdown into the amazing things that they're building there. And JIPPY just happens to be one of the projects which is close to my heart, which focuses on education, which, as we know, is not the quote-unquote sexiest thing in the industry, but it's, in my eyes, the most important one. But before we jump into JIPPY, like we do with all other episodes, let's go back, Oliver, right to your beginning of your Bitcoin journey. Where and how does it begin?
Yeah, this is a two-parter. So I first heard about Bitcoin in 2015, and I was young, dumb, didn't have much savings, didn't have much money at the end of the month, didn't know what money was, all of these topics. I just wasn't in the right place, the right mentality to understand it. I trusted the government. I felt like they had my best interest at heart, all of these things. So really, at no point at that moment in my life was I ready to receive the teachings. Then 2020 hit and everything just went crazy. So I had a particularly exhilarating time fighting the establishment in London for a couple of years during that period. And it was haunting, I think, what we all had to deal with in London. But it became the point where I learned about Bitcoin. I understood that it was a freedom technology. And so every time something ridiculous was said by the establishment, I bought more Bitcoin in protest. So it was this sort of silent protest for me. And it all sort of began, I think, with research into why money was broken. So I started researching Bitcoin. I understood that the dollar has actually lost 90% of its purchasing power since 1913 through the creation of the Federal Reserve. That was just to finance World War I. It became apparent to me that all the money that was printed during COVID era, 40% of all money ever created during 1 year, 2020, by Trump, Federal Reserve, all of that money went to one place and it went to the rich and powerful. It was the biggest wealth transfer in history. The world's 10 richest men doubled their fortunes from 700 billion to 1.5 trillion. So
And
you
us
have this
plebs, and us plebs got left with one steamy check for
yes,
$1,400, right? Sounds
exactly. Exactly. Sounds fair. So just to summarize, I think the research into broken money and understanding that inflation is literally just a hidden tax on the population made me question everything. And that led into understanding Bitcoin.
Amazing. So, I mean, like, what was the medium that you kind of were like, maybe Bitcoin, there's something behind it. Was there like a YouTube video, podcast, book, or like your friend sending you what? Do you remember that? Or
I do, yeah. I was really lucky. The individual who orange pilled me, Jordan is his name. He was my old boss, and he's the guy who tried to orange pill me in 2015, but it wasn't
wow.
at the right time. So he stuck with me, and he was very good at sending me small articles to read. He recommended the Bitcoin Standard. He recommended podcasts. And so I think my entry point, and it differs from everybody, obviously, but mine was the libertarian freedom view. Combined with this 21 million absolute scarcity. No one can I swear on this podcast, by the way?
Of course, there's
no one can fuck with the money. It literally is 21 million forever. So the government, no matter how much they want to try, cannot get their grubby hands on Bitcoin. They can't print more money to finance wars. It literally is the best money ever created. So that was the curriculum for me, and it worked, thankfully.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that aspect of absolute scarcity, it's really hard for the average person to comprehend because they see Bitcoin as, even like my parents, like we actually had this conversation just a few hours before getting on the show. My mother was like, well, what if Bitcoin fails? I'm like, well, Mom, Bitcoin's not it's not really it's not a company. It's not like someone will, just leave out and it flops. I was like, if Bitcoin fails, then the world, like the free world fails. There's a lot of things on Bitcoin failing. So I was like, if I have one belief, like I think Bitcoin's the last thing that will fail. Like everything else, and the money and, just like literally wherever you look, like everything actually is like an absolute scam, from like the food that they sell us, the movies that they push on us and our kids, absolutely everything. And why is that? Because everything funnels down from the central bank, may that be the Federal Reserve, Bank of England, whatever central bank. Because then at the end of the day, when you go down the central banking route, there's always the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of the central banks, which most people don't even, they think like the central bank is the peak. But no, my friends, the peak is very high, like it goes higher. And we have no idea who runs those institutions. They were never democratically elected individuals, and they only have one purpose, and that's to make their pockets fatter and basically enslave us further to just be, being cogs in a big machine, just, doing our 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Don't ask no questions. And if you found a way out, we can always penalize you with some jammy lawsuit or some sexual harassment, whatever, or even worse, like we've seen with Assange or, what's his name, with Ross Ulbricht, which hopefully day one, if Trump sticks to it, Ross will finally, after 12 and a half years coming out, like,
Ross. Yes,
it's insane, like it just doesn't give it justice. And then Bitcoin comes into this whole mix, and it's just like, I truly see Bitcoin as a renaissance for like the free man to actually free himself. Prior to Bitcoin, prior to 2009, like there was no way you can like truly exit the matrix unless you just want to go into the woods and live butt naked. I mean, apart from that, there's not really an alternative of just exiting out and enjoying life. But yeah, like this ultimate scarcity, going back to the original point, not to diverge, is a very powerful thing, which is first time in history where in physical realm and digital realm, we have absolute scarcity. I guess that was your kind of light bulb moment, right, Oliver, the 21 million.
Yeah, and it's sort of connecting the dots. I think that's what the Bitcoin Standard does really well, is it connects history and the money of history to today, and the debt-based money we have today, which is called fiat money or money by decree. And so our debt-based money, which is government money, we had thousands of years of using gold as money, and which is important because you want money that maintains its value through time. So the way I describe it, money is just a way to store your time and energy that you can redeem for goods and services in the future. So what that means is you don't want money that trickles value. Gold is absolutely scarce to a relatively degree. It depends on how much is in the Earth's crust, but it's hard to source. It's hard to process. Therefore, it makes a good savings.
Just to throw it in there.
Yes. So it makes good money. And so what's really interesting when you look at the history, the only reason humanity moved from a gold standard to debt-based money is because of World War One. And you can blame that on the central bank, which you mentioned. So this is really interesting stuff. If there are any historians out there, any folks who want to understand more about why this happened. So in 1914, to finance World War One, the British government sought to raise money to finance the war. And they wanted to raise about £350 million, which is around 38 billion today. And they did that by issuing war loans. So the general public were encouraged to buy these war loans to finance the war. The issue was, though, that nobody wanted this ridiculous war. And the war, just for context, I'm British, I can say this, the war was caused by Victoria marrying off her family members throughout Europe. And so it was just a big kerfuffle of family members fighting inwards that pulled in other countries. So they didn't want the war. And the war loans were hugely undersubscribed. So barely anyone purchased them. They only managed to raise 91 million out of the 350 million. So what did they do? Well, they devised a plan where the Bank of England, which is a central bank, went to the government and they bought the war bonds themselves. So in doing, they literally created this debt-based system where you create money out of thin air, you print money to buy assets. It's ridiculous.
Wow. Well, we learn something new every day. And actually, I learned it myself, Oliver. I had no idea that the whole fiat Ponzi started off from the World War One, war bonds in Central Bank of England. As I told you, Oliver, I spent 5 years living in London. Actually, my university was in the city of London. It was on St. Mary's Axe. On Liverpool Street, right next to St. Mary's Axe. So I used to walk past the Bank of England basically every day, not knowing like the history, the implications, and kind of the decisions behind those doors had an effect on the whole world. Wow.
Yeah. And just to add, which is really interesting, I didn't know this for the longest time, but the city of London is its own entity.
Yeah.
Correct.
And even the Queen has to go through a special passage to enter it, which is like...
Exactly. So its
non-conspiracy.
Its own laws, its own police force, its own regulations. It's a really interesting avenue to research that. But yes, everything can be tied back to World War One and the degradation of our money because of World War One and money.
But then gold, as we know famously in the Bitcoin rabbit holes of Bitcoin, where kind of Nixon, did that last streak of getting dollar off the gold standard in 71. What happened between since you know a lot about the past history in the wars, what happened between World War One and 1971 was with the gold kind of standard? How did that impact everything?
Yeah. So if you want to think about the chain of events, so it started with World War One, and that's when this process began. So the centralists realized that they could print money to finance wars. That led to insane amounts of debt, which led to countries like Germany. We don't have to discuss all that craziness today, but countries like Germany having to pay off insurmountable debt because of World War Two. So you have America with also a ballooning debt bubble that leads to the Great Depression. So you have this issue whereby you can't pay off these debts. We still have this rough gold standard that's sort of tied to money roughly. But the solution that the government decides is in 1933, decides to produce the Executive Order 6102. And that's where essentially gold is banned. To some degree. So it's just crazy. So that's the solution they believe is going to fix the problem. In fact, it makes it worse.
Crazy. And as you were saying that, an idea just popped into my mind that I wanted to bring up. It's actually really powerful that the Genesis block includes, the famous Times headline, the Chancellor, is on the brink of the second bank bailout, referencing to the English bank. And that's where kind of the fiat started off, which is even more powerful. Because I always questioned, why did Satoshi choose, that specific headline from like a UK newspaper? It could have been, a US one or a Japanese one or whichever one. But yeah, maybe there was a deeper meaning behind that Genesis block inscription.
It's because we broke the money first.
I see. It makes sense.
Yeah, everyone thinks that 1971 and 1930 is like the the actual
breaking
point at
point.
which we came off the gold standard. Correct, which it is to some degree. I mean, that's when it was like the nail in
That
the
was the
coffin.
fatal
This
blow.
process. Yes, exactly. But actually, it began in 1913, 14.
I see. I see. Well, wow. So thanks, Oliver, for that history take. Like, I love going back to history because you mentioned, like, breaking down Bitcoin to an average person, you gotta explain first the history of money, because there's no point of telling how immaculate this, technology is and the protocol and what it does if you don't understand why we need it, right? And going back to why our money is broken and the history that led us to this breakpoint, after that, Bitcoin, you don't have to sell it. It's a self-explanatory prophecy. So yeah, I always enjoy going back in history and learning something new. So thanks a lot, Oliver, for sharing that. I guess from 2020, you had this kind of lightning moment with Bitcoin. How did that lead you to Austin, and how did that lead you, kind of through your career of where you are today with JIPPY, and kind of drop some hints on how JIPPY came around?
Sure. So I have been, like you mentioned at the start with the intro, I've been in the tech industry for about, almost 10 years now, so almost a decade. And I've been in a variety of roles, from product roles to design roles and business roles, sales roles, but more recently, software engineering. So the 2020 era, I moved into my software engineering career, and that was always going to be my dream career, essentially. So I started taking the insight into Bitcoin and figuring out if I could actually move into the Bitcoin software engineering space specifically. So not working on core or working on Lightning or anything, but actually just working above that as a software engineer for a Bitcoin type company that is building on the network. So when I moved to America to escape life in COVID London, that was the goal. Either it was going to be Florida or Texas. And I have family here in Texas too. So I moved to Texas, and I had to unfortunately start with a shitcoin company. So I did work as a software engineer for a shitcoin company, but that led me to working at Swan. So that was probably the pivotal moment for me that switched. I was actually working in the Bitcoin space, surrounded by Bitcoiners. And during that time is when I started working on JIPPY. So it was really a hobby project for a couple of years. And it has recently, this year, became my full-time job, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, some of the best business ideas are the ones that start off as a hobby, because your main drive is kind of your passion and love, and like the energy that you're putting into this thing you're creating, instead of like the classic, let me start a business, I need to make X amount of money at the end of the month to, get by, and if I don't make it, or like if I'm not making these revenues, like it's a bad idea. But yeah, these are the best type of hobbies. I can speak for myself. Hopefully with this show, like, it opens up my own doors, because this is at the moment my hobby, but I am working slowly towards, working on it full time. But yeah, but focusing on JIPPY, I guess, how did you narrow it down? Like, was education something that was always close to your heart, or like, because there's so many things you can do, like with different apps. Essentially, what I tell people on Bitcoin, they're like, oh, like, I don't know what to do, like what to build on Bitcoin. I'm like, holy shit, like, you have a blank canvas, like everything needs to get built on Bitcoin. So like, how do you put your point on education?
So let me preface this by saying that my background is in education. So one of my greatest joys was working at a company called Makers Academy that is a coding bootcamp. So I was working as the head of admissions, and I was doing all of the interviews to help people transition to a career of becoming a software engineer.
Oh, nice.
So I really enjoyed that. And so I love educating people. I love communicating things to people. So it was really, the mission for me was how to figure out to transfer some of those skills to Bitcoin. And I believe that education, like you mentioned, is pivotal. I mean, with the US is $35 trillion in debt, that debt increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. So we all know that money's broken, and we all know that we need to transfer to Bitcoin, and we need mass adoption. The problem that I discovered when looking at this space is that education in Bitcoin is actually broken. Bitcoin has an education problem. So if you think about trying to educate the next generation of Bitcoiners, for example, so Gen Z and millennials, young millennials, their attention span is about 8 seconds, which is abysmal.
On a good day,
yeah, on a good day, when they're full of whatever stimulant they've been given by the state to pay attention. So you need to try and capture their attention. But in terms of some data for you guys, so learning is pretty boring, we established. 69% of young people find learning boring, and that's according to Yale News. Bitcoin education is hard, as we all know. Even for me, it was quite a hard technical beast to learn. And so 98% of novices don't actually understand basic Bitcoin topics, according to Blockworks. And so that means the Bitcoin barrier to entry is pretty high. And we actually also found out that 51% of people say a lack of knowledge is the biggest barrier to Bitcoin ownership. So that's the problem we're trying to solve through accessible, engaging, friendly education.
Amazing. And the one key factor in, as I mentioned in the intro, like through gamification, I think there's also the way how you deliver educational content. May that be through lecturing, may that be through books, may that be through, audio or via gamification, which I think is a very nice way, and something that especially Gen Zs, which I think is kind of your target demographic. And hopefully it is, because I'm sure you know this, Oliver, but I don't know if all the listeners know. Gen Z consists of like the biggest percentage of the global population today. So if you're not targeting to Gen Zs, you're definitely doing something wrong in your business. And Gen Z should be your number one priority, because Gen Zs are the one who will be, ruling the world in the future. So it's in our hands to equip them and set them with the right mindset to be essentially making the world a better place. So gamification, I think maybe we can go into that kind of, how did the idea come? Because I didn't mention in the intro, but through my own research that I did and on your website, I saw I want to say piggyback, but you kind of did this similar thing to Pokémon Go, right? Which kind of took the world by blast, everybody going out with their phones and scanning things and looking for Pikachu. So maybe you could share some thoughts on that.
Absolutely. You're right. We need to target education at Gen Z if we are hopefully in the position to reach hyper-Bitcoinization in time. So we need to appeal it to that 8-second attention span. And one of the most universally appreciated games of all time is Pokemon Go. And so we were trying to think about ways to make education more friendly and engaging. Pokemon Go, there are some really important parallels we can think about. So the game in 2016, they peaked at 232 million active players, which is huge. They grossed over 6 billion in revenue. Even this year, so earlier this year in March, 24% of 18 to 34-year-olds are still playing.
Wow. And I have a question up my sleeve if it's still active. So that's surprising. Nearly a decade later. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
Exactly. And 49% of 35 to 54-year-olds are still playing. So that tells me it's actually cross-generational, right? So we have this app, which is a global phenomenon, and it encourages people to get out and about off their laptops. So what if we could apply some of those things to the Bitcoin space? Let's say there's this app, it's called JIPPY, and we're building this thing called Tribe Clash. And the goal of this application is to make learning about Bitcoin engaging. So here's how it works. You join JIPPY and you start a game with Tribe Clash, and you join a tribe of friends, and a tribe is a collection of friends that you are inviting to play with. And each week, JIPPY will release a territory in your city for your tribe to claim. And there are 21 territories in total. So the objective is when you go to that territory that week with either one tribe member, it could be you, or it could be a whole group, we will send you a quiz question about Bitcoin to answer. And you've got to answer that question, or questions, plural, the fastest correctly. And you're battling with other tribe members. So if you answer correctly the fastest, you get to claim a Bitcoin-themed beast. And there are 21 territories, 21 Bitcoin-themed beasts. So the tribe with the most beasts at the end of the game will win half of Bitcoin.
That's amazing. I love how you gamified and use these key figures, like the 21 in it and this whole gamification with. So my question is, are you only focusing on the US? Because I presume so, right? It can't be worldwide. You can't be just hopping on a plane to go over to Tokyo to claim some territory.
Right. Yes. This is just the beginning. For JIPPY's journey, we launched the MVP, which is purely the education combined with Sats rewards. So you complete the education, we'll send you Bitcoin as a reward. So that was completed in a few months ago, launched 3 or 4 months ago. So this is really early, and Tribe Clash is the vision. So we hope to have our MVP built really soon. And to aid us in that fact, we actually launched a crowdfunding campaign on Timestamp, which we can talk about shortly.
Yeah.
But that campaign will help us build the minimum viable product. So it won't be the ideal. It will be enough to make it a fun tool to use. But hopefully, eventually, once we raise more money, once we're backed, venture capital backed, that's when we can build something global, something more like Pokemon Go. But for now, we want to set our sights on something that's achievable.
No, of course, and I think you're doing it the right way. You're kind of doing a stepping stone to get where you want to be, instead of just jumping for the far end and going out to go raise $100 million to build this product that some startups do with I don't know what they're smoking, but they think suddenly they're gonna get everything off the ground in 12 months with all this money pouring in. Also, you want to test and get feedback from the people and see what they like, what they don't. So you're crafting the right product. But yeah, it's very interesting. And to be honest, I see like if it goes really well in the US, and maybe that's down in your roadmap, you would kind of expand to different parts of the world and have their own kind of clans and their own languages. Because another thing when it comes to education that I've noticed, and I'm sure Oliver, you probably noticed as well, most of Bitcoin education today in 2024 is English. And most people don't realize that. I think it's some ridiculously small number. It's like something like 10 or 15% of the global population actually speaks English. So we have like 85 to 90% of people that are excluded from all this information, which is just mind-boggling. If we just take one language, Spanish, right, and we look at the whole LATAM area, which is going through crazy development at the moment, it's just there's such a void to be filled. So yeah, truly, I see a lot of growth and a lot of things that could be developed with as JIPPY grows. But not jumping too far, let's take it to timestamps, because I want you to share with my audience. I've done my research, Oliver, and I saw the campaign live. But I want to share for you to share firsthand. You've kind of taken a very innovative, different route to the usual startup where they go and pitch it to a venture fund, which is backed by big institutions that are just looking for entry point, exit point. What's the route you've chosen with Timestamp?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I think that Bitcoin is the most important reason for being alive. Period. I mean, that this thing is multi-generational wealth. It's going to fix the world. Right. And so I think the reason we're going through crowdfunding is because we're building it for humanity. We're building it for people. We're not here for a quick exit. We want to make this thing a global phenomenon. We want to be, hopefully, one of the largest and most popular on-ramps into the Bitcoin space for beginners. And so that goal, hopefully, will be achieved by going to really energized Bitcoiners, people who believe in this vision and actually helping us to build this thing. So Timestamp is really cool because Arman is the founder and CEO. He built this platform, which is
Dr. Bitcoin.
It's Dr. Bitcoin. Yes, exactly. He built this platform, which is regulated and it's backed. It's regulation crowdfunding. And that means that we can accept investment from accredited investors as well as the general public. So anybody, literally anybody who wants to invest in an idea can do so through Timestamp. The website is timestampfinancial.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. But
we'll have the link.
Perfect. It enables what is essentially micro investment. So if you're someone who's wanted to invest in something before but wasn't able to legally, you can put $2,000 in and see your investment grow over time.
Incredible. I mean, that just like opens the floodgates to so much opportunity, because before, as you mentioned, kind of this term of accredited investor, right? Like it's such a niche of people that are actual accredited investors, and there's so many people that just love, a cause, or anybody listening to this episode. If you want to go out and, support and you love what Oliver's building and you want to be a part of cementing this growth and helping forward, $2,000 is not that little, but it's not $200,000 that you need to sink in to be an investor in the company. I mean, 2,000 with inflation nowadays, I guess it's the iPhone 17 will be starting from $2,000. So if you skip on one smartphone device, you can, contribute to something that you really believe in. And yeah, shout out to Dr. Bitcoin as he
Yeah.
goes on Twitter. It's amazing what he's doing with his platform. And I believe JIPPY is one of the, if
We're
not
the
the
first.
first, you're
We're
the
the
first.
first.
You're the
We're the
Genesis
first to go
project.
through. Yes, we are. And also, it's worth mentioning that this is global as well. So we're not excluding any investors anywhere. Literally, if you have money that you want to invest in a Bitcoin project, Jippy is the first. You can invest.
I like it. It follows the ethos of Bitcoin. There's no borders in Bitcoin land.
No.
You know, it's one small little Earth that's spinning through space at like thousands of kilometers and has no limits. So it's amazing because usually with investors, some areas are restricted and there is like a burden of documentation that you need to do and paperwork, which is at the end of the day, it's all middlemen, lawyers, accountants, everybody taking their piece of the pie.
Right.
But whereas with Timestamp, they're just easing it out. You can go online, register, I believe within minutes, submit some basic information about you, bam, wire, or even, I guess you can pay with Bitcoin, right? Or it goes through traditional routes.
Unfortunately, we're doing traditional. Yeah, it has to do that right now. There's more loopholes that we have to jump through to accept Bitcoin. But for now, for Jippy being the first company, you know, we can accept wire, we can accept bank connection through Plaid, or we can do a transfer as well, or card payment. So it's still pretty easy. It's not ideal. We want Bitcoin obviously to be used, but that hopefully will come in the future. We'll get there.
No, amazing. So more about the project. So tell us a little bit more about like the team. You're definitely not a one-man show, right? Or are you, Oliver? Are you Mr. Superman?
No, I have a co-founder called Brad, he's an operations expert, and he's awesome. He's worked at companies like Amazon and others. He's my right hand. So anything, because I do all of the design, I do product, I do the software engineering, and the CEO as well. So the vision stuff alongside that. He is my right hand, and he's a great delegator that I can put stuff on. So it's the both of us, and we've been working on this, like I mentioned, a couple of years as a hobby project. Brad joined at the start of the year. And so any money we get through this crowdfunding solution would help us build Tribe Clash and bring that to the world in a few months.
Amazing. And if I'm not mistaken, the crowdfunding kicked off, was it 1st of October or 1st of November, somewhere around then?
1st of November, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it did. So we're about close to 2 weeks in, and we've got 10% of funds raised, hopefully another 10% in the next few days. So we are slowly inching towards the goal. The goal would be to raise 250,000, which is a very reasonable pre-seed amount that would allow us to build the game.
Amazing. And once the funding has been secured, what's the, I know you don't have exact things, and always with tech development, things do, take a little bit longer, but like, when are you looking to release the game? Is it like Q1 of next year, Q2? What do you have in mind?
Yes, Q1 is the signpost on the ground. By then, we hope to have raised the money, and we hope to have at least completed the MVP. So something that we can test in one city, probably Austin, because that's where I'm based, and that's where Pleb Lab is based, and the Bitcoin community here. Yeah, so we would have that first game done in Q1 and tested. And then from there, we might look at, I don't want to give too much away, but launching it at another Bitcoin event. So instead of, let's say, having the long version of Tribe Clash, which would take, it's 1 week, one territory, it would be about 5 months of game time. We would do a kamikaze, super fast version across, turbo version across 2 days. So it would be a new territory every hour across 2 days. So we could do something like that at a Bitcoin event, for example.
Amazing, because that was one question I had lined up that I wanted to ask you, Oliver, kind of what would be your plan to kind of market and distribute the game? Because it's, there's so many different avenues you could take, but I guess through like conferences is a good one, because especially nowadays, Bitcoin conferences get like thousands of people that come through, and then the word of mouth just spreads like COVID, like a virus. But yeah, apart from like conferences, like what other venues, like how do you see this game spreading to other cities and then later to other countries in the future?
Yeah. So first of all, you mentioned it already, we want to focus on events because that's where the Bitcoin is going to be. So we can piggyback off of some of the traction there and some of the noise, PR noise, and run JIPPY hopefully successfully across 2 days. So that would be the goal. From there, we want to get the eyeballs of Gen Z. So we would likely partner with schools and other institutions, educational institutions, as an on-ramp into the application. So that would allow us to find people who would be interested. Not to mention, we'll see how effective it is, but paid marketing across TikTok and Snapchat and applications like that. So digital town squares where Gen Z are present, that's where we want to market at TribeCash. So we hope at some point in the next few months to have a really compelling video demo to show to the world, hopefully something really visually stimulating that shows the actual app being used in person. So that would help us too. But yes, I think there is a roadmap in mind for how we're going to start rolling this thing out, likely city by city, but eventually we'll have a solution whereby you can actually vote your city. So the cities with the highest votes would then be able to play the game. But we want to be global at some point, so we'll expand beyond that later as well.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the one social media platform, TikTok, where if we're talking about Gen Zs, that's like, you cannot not focus on that platform. And in some ways, working with, people and, influencers in that space, you suddenly have access to so many eyeballs, and it's much better than any paid ad or billboard or magazine feature or anything, because you actually, get through to your ideal call it customer or player, but people that, want to jump on, they already got their phone in their hand, they swap out, go to the Apple store or Android, Google Play Store, download the game, bam, and they're straight into it. So if I'm not mistaken, there's like a initial payment, like a ticket that you need to buy, or like, how does it go? It's not like free to play, right? What's like the monetizing idea behind it?
We're still playing with a revenue model for sure, because it obviously is going to be the kicker for us to get right. We need this thing to work. And so we don't want to exclude people who are willing to play but unable. So the first approach that we want to take is to actually pull in Bitcoin companies that would sponsor gameplay. So I mentioned 21 territories. So there's 21 geo-fenced physical real world territories that will be overlaid on a map, like Google Maps, for example. And so we can go to these Bitcoin companies and source 21 of them, and they would sponsor each individual territory for a certain amount of money. And that means there could be some special personalized territory, some call to action, specific to that company. So that's one way we could pull in money. Another would be, yes, not ideal, but would be charging to play. So there would be like an admission ticket for you to play, be it $20, $40, whatever. But that kind of still does make sense, because it would energize someone to be there and actually become a part of the gameplay, especially when there's $30,000 worth of Bitcoin on the line. It's a high ticket reward. But we have some other ideas too, but those are the two main ones so far.
Amazing. Yeah, just kind of my two cents on the latter option with like paying up front. We kind of seen that, and not that I'm a fan of. I did have that virus, but then I got over it with NFTs, right? The whole kind of mania of NFTs, like you need to buy an NFT to get access to, in the play and earn concept. And yeah, that didn't last long. Like that ship sailed. So I think, especially Gen Zs, it's really hard for them to like get them to pay for something to try out, because they're used to just getting everything free online, So
exactly.
Yeah, maybe the first option that you mentioned, Oliver, that would be a more smoother and actually it would be a win-win for both, for you and the company that's sponsoring the certain region, because they're kind of cross, they're marketing their own product or service or whatever they're doing through a gamified experience. So instead of them, getting paid ads, they can, sponsor city and have may that be cold storage or whatever it is. I think that would be a nice kind of synergy, and also it would broaden your partnerships, because instead of you doing everything on your own, it's nice to have partners, especially companies that have been in the Bitcoin space for several years. I think it would be a nice synergy.
Yeah, true. And I think for us, we see JIPPY as the on-ramp, like the universal on-ramp into the ecosystem. And so really, because the education is such an important part, and because to actually play Tribe Clash and to collect beasts, you actually need to know about Bitcoin in the first place, because answering quiz questions is how you collect the beasts. We actually have a really incentive to push people to other areas of the ecosystem. So from completing islands of content in JIPPY, and we're categorized by experience level. So right now we have like a beginner island, intermediate island, and there'll be a mastery island. If each of those islands are also sponsored by companies, we can start pushing people towards, I don't know, buying Bitcoin through Swan Bitcoin, or self-custody through CoinKite, or doing this more expansive course, Base 58. So there's lots of different things we can do that would actually help people discover different things as part of the ecosystem.
I like it. Yeah, no, definitely. As you said, the whole idea of Jippi being the on-ramp, it's kind of, it's not the end destination. It's kind of your entry into the Bitcoin tunnel. And from there on, there's so many different avenues you can take. And as you said, buying your sats, storing your sats, or maybe securing your seed phrases. Shout out to Stamp Seed. But no, I mean, there's so many, and there's going to be so many other businesses and services that will come out in the future where it's kind of, how do you introduce your product to individuals? And, and I hope, fingers crossed, if JIPPY grows the way it goes, you would kind of be the go-to ecosystem where they plug into your gameplay, and then suddenly, they're exposed to so many people that are learning about Bitcoin and need that service that they're providing. The more we speak about this, Oliver, the more I love this idea, because it like unravels so many possibilities. Yeah, we started off the introduction to JIPPY kind of this clone to Pokemon Go, but it goes way beyond it.
Oh yeah,
it's like NOSTR, right? When people first discover NOSTR, it's a decentralized Twitter, right, Oliver? And then the more you go and with Zapstream and everything, there's so much that it, and it's expanding even more. And this all has happened in less than 3 years. So imagine with the speed of technology and development, I mean, wow, if you really set your mind and you're onto a good thing. And I think with JIPPY solving the big, as you said, void, the broken education aspect of Bitcoin, you're kind of plugging up a really big void, which needs to be done if we want to see this hyper Bitcoinization, because Bitcoinization. It's a long word that's hard to roll off the tongue, and especially at 10 p.m. at night. People see nation states today buying Bitcoin, and the MicroStrategies and maybe even Microsofts of the world putting on the balance sheets. That's all good and all, but to me, Bitcoin's made for the people, not for the nation states and for big companies. Those guys already have enough money and their own money printers. I want sats trickling down to the average person, and how do we do that? Through education, through kind of getting them to learn more, to be curious. So yeah, I mean, this is the most innovative, I can say so far, idea I've seen about education, because as I mentioned, there is Udemy courses, and there's a lot of dry stuff, but there's nothing really that entices you, and especially that gets you out to move and communicate with other people, because this is another aspect that kind of JIPPY is tampering in, which I think Orange Pill app is doing an amazing thing, which is people going out and meeting other Bitcoiners. Because this space can get very isolating sometimes, especially if you're just on your own, you're just sitting on your Bitcoin Twitter, and then you close it and you walk out, and kind of there's nobody really to share your Bitcoin banter with. So community is a huge one.
Yeah, thank you for saying all that. I concur, obviously being founder of JIPPY. We all want hyper Bitcoinization, and the way we do that is by building tools at the end of the day that will pull in more people. And so that's my biggest ask for people, Bitcoiners in general, is we get there by funding tools like JIPPY to help us build. And so we have an audacious goal. We want to mobilize the next generation of Bitcoiners. So definitely come help us and build this thing. It's very exciting. We are looking to the future with so many different possibilities. I mean, we talked about some of them today, but you mentioned it's just so broad. We want to build so much stuff, and this is just the beginning. But Timestamp will definitely help us get to that place.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this goes back to my listeners who will be like, oh no, Gigi, don't go down the rabbit hole. But the scarcity of time, right? There's so much we want to build, but we have only so much time. So it's important, as I always mention on really every episode, to focus on things that really matter and making most of the time that we have. And I think with what you're doing with the JIPPY, it's, as I would call it, time well spent. You're kind of investing so much time, energy, and funds into something that could truly bring in the next wave of Bitcoiners. And it's something that we truly need, because, the way things are going are good, but they're certainly not as good as they could be. But yeah, who knows? And what other, streams or features or future businesses may grow out of, JIPPY, because I think they're kind of laying down the foundations for gamified Bitcoin education. There is some, of course, alternatives maybe not digital, but we had a few weeks ago, we had Scott from Shamory on with the board game and some books, and they're focused on a much younger demographic than Gen Zs. They're like going like straight to like baby steps.
Yeah.
Which I think is also important because, me being a dad myself, I'm already like planting my mini orange seeds into like my 4 and 3-year-old, and they already know about Bitcoin, and they're talking about it, they're asking questions. So it's never too early to start learning about Bitcoin, but you need to kind of cater to different demographics. And the interesting fact, which I had no idea about, which you brought up not that long ago, Oliver, about Pokemon Go, kind of catering to all different demographics and generations, clearly shows that there is an interest. And of course, people that love Pokemon Go will be like, "Oh, this is a fresh like Bitcoinized Pokemon Go. Why don't I give it a go?"
Yeah, and that's just one facet of what JIPPY could be. I mean, we have the education, we have the free Bitcoin rewards. So the game is perhaps for Gen Z and millennials, but at the end of the day, JIPPY could be for anybody. And if there happens to be higher net worth individuals or who are older boomers who want to learn about Bitcoin through JIPPY, they can do that.
Correct.
And then the next logical step from educating them is to allowing them to purchase. So that would be a potential thing that we would consider down the line, is actually to in-house a purchase flow into JIPPY.
You mentioned an interesting fact there, which Scott from Shamory mentioned. They go to a lot of these like conferences as well, but like smaller, like Bitcoin, like on the road shows and like different pop-ups. And he mentioned the story where he didn't mention, of course, and we respect everyone's privacy, but like a CEO of like a really big Bitcoin mine in the US, he came up to Scott and he was like, like your board game has like the best way of explaining how mining works, that they actually use it like in the company with investors.
No
Imagine
way.
like, so talk about like high net worth individuals. They're using the Shamory monsters and the board game to basically break it down, in layman terms, in 2-year-old language of how mining works. So and like, I was like, you would never think, like, I could even picture like there's a boardroom meeting and, they just like smash these like right in the middle, these Shamory cardboard, cards, and they're swiveling around. But the same thing with JIPPY, it could be, as you said, boomers or even ultra high net worth individuals that don't want to listen to a podcast, or they don't want to read the Bitcoin Standard or any of the other amazing Bitcoin books. They would just, they're like swiping on their phone and they're like, hey, I can learn it this way. So as I say, you never know until you try. So it's essentially for everyone.
Agreed. And that's why our slogan is Bitcoin education for the masses. We are building this tool for everyone in all walks of life to be able to understand and play with Bitcoin. So we hope it's going to be a success.
I love it. So I guess to kind of round it up, I usually close the episodes with, I ask my guests like, what is like one piece of advice that you would give to newcomers that are looking to learn about Bitcoin, apart from, of course, trying out JIPPY, like, or what would you tell people before you went like full time into JIPPY? What was like your piece of advice for like people to focus on?
Don't get distracted by the shit coins.
That's a good one.
Because it's an alluring siren call to most people to see number go up, to see Dogecoin, to see Monero, all of this rubbish that at the end of the day is going to come down as quickly as it rose. It's not the single best form of money ever created, which is Bitcoin. We've got that already. It's built. It's Bitcoin. We don't need another one. So I would say just advice to folks is just don't get distracted by the meme coins and buy as much Bitcoin as you physically can. And that doesn't have to be big volumes. It literally can be $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever, because it adds up. But just because you see the price rallying now, and I think we're something nearly $89,000, $90,000 per coin, just because you see that doesn't mean you can't buy. It will come up again, it will come down again, but eventually it will be hyper priced. But for now, just buy some each month. It will add up. And at the end of the day, dollar cost averaging is the best way to buy Bitcoin.
I like it. Wow. That was some really good advice. No shitcoining and regular DCA, which is kind of what I preach to my kind of social circles, newcomers. And I'm sure you went through it as well, Oliver. Okay. I certainly did. I jumped, like my journey started in like the peak ICO boom, and like I was throwing money at every shitcoin that was going to come and revolutionize this and revolutionize that. And then in the end, it just all went to ash, or it didn't even get to ash. It was rug prior to ash status. So yeah, basically just focus on Bitcoin. And yeah, as you said, Oliver, I couldn't agree more. People, and I discover this on daily basis, well, maybe not daily basis, but like on regular occurrences, when I speak to the average person in the street about Bitcoin, I tell them, like start buying Bitcoin. And they're like, well, I don't have, 60, 70, $80,000 to buy. And I'm like, no, you can buy $50 worth. And they're like, you can? And then like my favorite way to like blow someone's mind up when I tell them, well, how many units are there in your, currency? May that be the ruble, pound, the euro, Japanese yen. It's like, oh, there's 100 units, right? And it's like, yeah. I'm like, well, do you know how many units there are in Bitcoin? They're like, 1,000. And I'm like, a little bit more. And it's like,
a little bit more.
10,000. And it's like, no, a little bit more. Then it's like, can't be 1,000,000. I'm like, yeah, 100x. And it's like, whoa, like you just like see these pupils go like, they're like, what? 100 million? And it's like, yeah, like this is my favorite counter argument to people that are like, oh, but the world cannot sustain on a Bitcoin standard. There's not enough coins. And I get this like scaling aspect, like, oh, we need to invent other like layer 2 coins to like scale it. I'm like, guys, if we break it down into Satoshis, it's a 2.1 quadrillion units. And if we take all the world's like net worth and the biggest scam, the derivatives market, like all of that Ponzi bonanza into a sum, into a bag, it's less than a quadrillion. And here we have 2.1 quadrillion units. Of course, we can sustain of Bitcoin. And, we can even go into microsats, which goes even deeper, right? If we really have to, in maybe 20,500. But for now, at least in our lifetime, they'll like, we can definitely sustain. And the most important thing that I tell people is by adopting Bitcoin and starting to kind of save in it, your whole mindset shifts from a consumerist mindset to an actual preserving like savings mindset, which is missing in today's world. We're all like taught into this consumerism every year, new product, buy this, buy that. But at the end of the day, we should be saving and having a nice cushion because we never know what happens tomorrow. We might lose the job. Everything goes to shit. You need some money. Like, where are you going to go? You're going to go out hungry. But like on a Bitcoin standard, you're always going to have some bread and way to provide for your family, which I think is the most important thing that people don't really think about the long term. It's all about today. Forget about tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll figure out about tomorrow. But Bitcoiners are kind of like, we don't think about tomorrow. We're thinking about the next 10 years and like the next generations, which is very powerful stuff that I don't think any other technology has got like the human mind to really shift to low time preference instead of just buy, and who knows how we get by. That was all right.
Yeah. No, that was great. And you had touched upon something important, which is this debate that I am seeing always comes up between folks when there's a bull market, which is this argument between like finite supply and infinite divisibility. So there's this comparison always, which is, you have this pizza pie and you can technically divide it infinitely into little different slices. And just because you can do that, and just because you can continuously cut the pizza smaller, doesn't mean that there's actually an infinite supply. There isn't an infinite supply. The size of the pizza is the same. Like, you still have pizza and it was the same size originally. So, you have sats and you can definitely distribute sats and make it easier to scale Bitcoin network. But at the end of the day, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin available.
We've got it right here. And everything will be divided by
21 million.
But 21 millions. So yeah, you better start stacking now because, it's never too late to get into Bitcoin. And kind of my last, rant on Bitcoin is it's like, no matter what price you get in, you always think it's expensive. So people buying today at 90,000, like, oh my God, it's 90,000. Because like I've had guests on the show that were buying Bitcoin at $100 and $200. And they were like, wow, that was so expensive. And now I don't think they're thinking that was expensive. And in the future, when Bitcoin's $1 million, you'll be like, oh, why didn't I buy some when it was 90K,
right.
So like, don't wait. No need to also go like all in. It's not a poker game. You actually don't have to go all in now. But just slowly, just keep adding, and it compounds. And the more the government prints the money, the more it loses its value. the higher Bitcoin's value goes, and it's kind of the opposite trajectory. So yeah, I guess I can go on these rants all night long, but I think it's a nice place to stop it there. Oliver, where can we send our listeners apart from, of course, the JIPPY website, and we will have the timestamp, right?
Timestamp.
There's so many stamps now recently in my mind. But timestamp link to your crowdfunding. So anybody listening to this episode, if you want to support Oliver in his cause and be a part of JIPPY and really kind of help to these awesome guys to build their MVP and slowly take over the world with their education app, you can do so. So we'll have that in the show notes. But if people want to, follow you personally, where's the best place? Is it X, NOSTR, or both?
Yeah, thank you, Gigi. This has been an absolute joy. My favorite thing in the world is just to talk shit about the world, the state of the world, and talk about Bitcoin. So thank you. But yes, we are so excited about Timestamp. So you can head there and invest in the campaign. We would love that so much. You can find us on X as well. So we are Jippi App on X. That's JIPPI. You can find me on X as well as the founder, and I'm Heyolpo. That's HEYOLPO. You can also head to the website jippy.app, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's a little email button that will open an email to us. That will email us hello@jippy.app if you want to start the conversation.
Amazing. Well, there you have it, guys. You have all the infos. Oliver, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and best of luck with the Jippi app. I'm really looking forward to it slowly spreading over the world in the coming years and hopefully coming across the Atlantic. But yeah, until then, best of luck with all the next steps that you have. Definitely would love to have you back in the future to hear how the JIPPY story is unraveling and all the exciting things that are going on. Because as I always say, like, our Bitcoin stories are only getting started. This technology is only 16 years old. It hasn't been around for 600 years. We are building history every day. So yeah, would love to have you back and see how things are going. But until then, all the best of luck, and hope to have you back on the show soon.
Thank you, brother. It's been a blast.